I don't know about y'all, but I'm still kind of riding a little bit off the emotional high of Derrick Rose night. But on today's episode, we're going to talk about which Chicago Bulls need to continue to step up the most for the Chicago Bulls in the second half of the season, whether it be through just evaluating their talent or be through this team actually trying to compete and make the play in. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Mark Stein has come out and said that rival teams around the NBA are waiting for the Chicago Bulls to slip up and make a move. We're going to talk a little bit about that, plus preview today's game against the Spurs. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about some players that I want to see really kind of step up in the second half. Why and where I'm going to break it all down when it comes to it. But the two players I'm going to focus the most on here are Coby White and Josh Giddey. And I think when you look at the way that they've played over the last few games, on top of just how important they are to this Bulls system running, I think that Coby and Josh Giddey still finding their balance is going to be really important for it, right? We see what Coby White can be when he's in the zone, even playing with Josh Giddey, right? And the Bulls wins this season. I think one of the key things that I'm always going to point out to with Coby White is getting Coby White to play more like Coby. I don't know what the Bulls were doing. I don't know what the goal was coming into the season to have Coby White turn more into a jump shooter. But it did not work. It did not work. But lately, we're starting to see that start changing for Coby White in a considerable way, and we're going to get into it. I'm going to give you guys the exact details on how the thing is playing, how the way that he's being used is changing, and how it's actually helping him substantially be an overall better player for the Chicago Bulls team. Right. So one of the things I always point out with Coby is drives. Right. He's starting to rise up. He was averaging less than 11 drives per game on the season, right? But that's really the last 5 games that has drastically changed for Coby White, right? In the Bulls wins this season, he's averaging at least 12 drives per game, 9 in losses by the Chicago Bulls. The last 5 games for Coby White, he's averaging nearly 16 drives per game. And in the last couple of games, we've seen that go up to 18, right? When you also look at it, he's averaging almost, off those 16 drives per game, he's averaging almost 10 points scored on drives, and he's passing on 50% of those opportunities. And when he's driving to the lane over the last 5 games, he's averaging less than 1 turnover on those drives as well, right? And also, the way that helps the team is that Coby White is like on his drives, right? The Bulls are scoring on 50% of his drives, whether it be through him scoring or it be through his assist and the person that he passes the ball to scores. What does that mean? The way that Coby White operates as a guard, right, and the way that he can create for others is all built around him being in attack mode. And we're seeing more of Coby White actually attacking than doing anything else, right? When you look at it on the season, I've talked about this before, on the season, right, nearly 65% of his total shots were coming from above the break threes and corner threes. Over the last 5 games, what we're seeing with Coby White is that it's changing drastically. He's now scoring nearly between mid-range shots, paint touches, and drives. He's doing that nearly at almost 50%. So it's really changing drastically over this time period for Coby White. And we're seeing him play much better over that stretch as well. And that's an important thing. And then when you look at the last 5 games for Coby White, while his drives have gone up, he's scoring 23.6 points per game over that time, 6.2 assists, 4 rebounds in that time. He's shooting the ball 43% from 3 and 50% from overall from the field. That's over the last 5 games for Coby White, where the drives have gone considerably up, right? And then you take that and look at the last 10 games for Coby. Last 10 games for Coby, 19 points per game on 44% shooting and 36% shooting from 3, 4.5 assists per game, 3 rebounds per game. And keep in mind, over that last 10-game stretch, that's some of the games where Coby White was shooting or averaging nearly 30% from the field and 20-something% from 3. So we're seeing Coby White improve, and we need to continue to see that improvement and that balance between him and Josh Giddey to get the most out of this version of the backcourt for the Chicago Bulls. So it's there, right? There's still questions about how much that they can balance and things like that, but Josh Giddey and Coby are starting to show that, hey, we can work together. It's not a problem that we can work together. But again, that goes to coaching and how they're used, right? And that's why even when Josh Giddey and Coby White were having their down stretches or whatever, the team was going through it, I always like to focus on coaching. Not to say that not everything is coaching. Some things is on the players. For example, like I've said before, there's not a single play in Billy Donovan's playbook where it's calling for Coby White to contort his body and make a weird throw on driving, right? That is in Coby White's head, but Coby has to be more focused. He has to be more in rhythm. And, I compared it a lot to Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan, how Vuce had to find a different way to get in rhythm playing with DeMar, mainly because they start their offense in the same spots. And now you're seeing Nikola Vucevic have a much better season now that he's kind of more able to get to his spots more naturally. Coby and Josh Giddey don't really have that problem per se, right? Yes, both are bigger guards that can rebound. They like to also drive, but Josh Giddey's more of a straightforward, traditional, creative point guard, right? Meaning that he can create out on the perimeter. We'll get more into Josh Giddey in a moment. And Coby White's more of the type of point guard, the Jamal Murray-esque point guards, where he can create and he can do a pretty damn good job at it. But players have to be ready. They have to move without the ball, and Coby has to have the ball earlier in the shot clock so that he can drive and operate on those times so often, right? And, I've talked to a lot of Bulls fans that they say, well, why does Coby come out of games so early, right? Why are you sitting Coby so early? And that's Billy Donovan trying to stagger the minutes, right? You're still going to play a lot of minutes of Josh Giddey and Coby White together, but you're trying to stagger it, basically meaning that so Coby can have more opportunity to be great off drives. He's going to have to sit because Josh Giddey, he's not necessarily the player that he can make some threes, open threes, right? And he's taking them, right? He's not necessarily making them the best lately, but he's taking them. But you have players, especially when Ayo's in this, I think that's going to be a really important part. If you stagger Josh Giddey and Coby White, because they're still going to start together. I know Bulls fans have said, let's start somebody else. It's not happening, right? Not via what Billy Donovan has shown. But if you stagger those minutes, if Coby does sit 6 minutes into the first quarter, you bring in Ayo Dosunmu, and then he finishes that quarter with Giddey, and then Coby comes in at the start of the second quarter playing with Ayo, and then at the second half, you kind of do it again. You're going to have some minutes out there with Coby and Josh Giddey even after that initial run. But that's kind of how you can, again, coaching. The point of coaching is to basically maneuver and manipulate and but plan out like how you do that type of thing. And so that's an important part. But we're seeing Coby White still not ready to say he's out the slump completely, but we're starting to definitely see Coby White. And one of the keys to that is drives. And so if we want to unlock Coby White for the rest of the season, we have to allow Coby White to be Coby White. Same thing with Josh Giddey. If you look over that same 5-game span where Coby White has been playing better, Josh Giddey's also been playing better. 13.6 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, 6.8 assists per game, right? So almost 7 assists. He's averaging basically 14, 11, and 7 if you round those numbers up, right? Those are really good numbers. He's doing that in 28 minutes per game. I know a lot of, Giddey fans want to see him play more. I understand it, right? Also, Josh Giddey shooting the ball 45% from the field, 53% on 2-point attempts. That's a big thing to point out there with Josh Giddey as well. He's also averaging 33.3% from three, which for Josh Giddey, that's about where you want him to be at, right? He's also averaging a steal per game, a block per game. Josh Giddey and Coby, we're starting to see over this stretch how they can balance it out. You take that further for the 10 games. 13.2 points per game on 46.8% shooting from the field, 27% shooting from three, but 61% on 2-point attempt rate. Also, a steal and a half per game and 0.6 blocks per game over that. Josh Giddey's also doing a really good job at not fouling. Josh Giddey's averaging 1 foul per game, which I think is a really big thing when you look at how often the Bulls are putting opposing teams on the free throw line. So those are all things to really keep monitoring and watching that. Again, I think that it's a big part to get these guys on the same page because, hey, this season, we'll see what happens going forward. This is your backcourt, right? And you want and they can fit together. Yes, it takes more actual coaching, which is something that a lot of people go to make it work, but it can work. And we're starting to see more and more signs of that. So if we're looking at the remainder of the season, we're 6 games back from the official halfway mark of the season. But for the rest of the season, I really want to see Coby White and Josh Giddey and how they continue to unlock themselves and develop as a backcourt, right? And then other players that I want to talk about as well. Of course, Matas Buzelis. I think that, if Matas Buzelis, I think it only does come if a trade is made to where he does get consistently over 20 minutes per game. But in his role, whatever the minutes are, as Modest Vucevic continues to develop, he's already miles ahead of where Dalen was as a rookie. He's already miles ahead of where Julian was as a rookie, right? He's already, some people would even say, ahead of where Patrick Williams is. I'm not going to say that yet because the defensive aspect of it, he's not playing as many minutes, but he's there. And you can see the more important thing that compared him to the other Bulls rookies in the past is that just in his own, you're seeing that Modest Vucevic can impact the game of basketball. And that's what you want for a rookie, that you're not playing a lot, right? It's different if we were at the point where like Modest was starting for the team. Of course, the criteria would be different. But I think when you're looking at Modest Vucevic and the fact that he's learning to play a role, right? And he's learning to fit in. Yes, I want his minutes to be more consistent, Billy Donovan, but I think that he's a really important factor if he continues to grow and develop for this Bulls team as well. And then kind of other players is, of course, Lonzo. We're seeing Lonzo play over 20 minutes at times now. Lonzo Ball is a player that even when his shot's not falling is so impactful for the Chicago Bulls. And by the way, I'm saying this, I'm not having Coby and Vooch on this list because they've already been playing great. They've been playing amazingly well, right? So they just need to keep up what they've been doing already. But if these players that I'm mentioning can be better, right? And of course, Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. I would just want to see the continued maturation of these players and how they're going to turn out in the NBA level. But I think overall, you're really looking at that Josh Giddey, Coby White backcourt, get Io back in here, and we have a really solid backcourt rotation. It's just Billy Donovan has to actually coach it and manage it better than what he's been doing. And I think we'll see a little bit better from that. But let's move on to the next topic. Mark Stein, who's been covering the trade rumors and everything very, very deeply, here. And that's what he does. He came out and said that rival front offices are watching the Chicago Bulls closely because of the Chicago Bulls draft situation. He said that because the Bulls must finish with the sixth worst record to retain their 2025 first-round pick. But us as Bulls fans know that it may not be what the Bulls are focused on. But they're saying that, right now, with the Bulls being on the cusp of conveying that pick to the San Antonio Spurs, that a lot of league offices are waiting to see if the Bulls are going to make a move similar to what the Brooklyn Nets did with Dennis Schroeder, where they took 6 second-round picks back between Dennis Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith, right? And so here's the thing. I understand this, and I think all Bulls fans are gonna rock with me when I say this. Of course, teams are waiting to see if AK and Eversley make a stupid move. Because what have they done? They've been behind on their evaluation of everything, right? And so, yes, there are teams that are probably waiting and holding out that if the Bulls get desperate to keep this pick, right, that they may say, all right, bet, we wanted a first for Vooch, but we'll take your four second-round picks and salary cap filler if you got an expiring. Or, yeah, sure, listen, I understand what rival execs, if I was a rival exec to the Chicago Bulls, I'd be waiting for them to mess up too, to be quite frank, right? But the Bulls have to hold the line on this one. They cannot, and again, this isn't just about, we don't want to lose a trade, but this is just about if you're moving off players like Vooch or Zach, for that matter, who have been playing at the level they do, you better damn well get, I said it on yesterday's episode, we're at the bare minimum, we're talking about a first and an unprotected first in the case of Zach LaVine. Now, Mark Stein also adds in this. He says that Lonzo Ball and Nikola Vucevic are more likely at this point to be traded than Zach LaVine. And that is something interesting in that one. Right now, not only does he point out because of Zach LaVine's contract at $43 million this season, $46 million the season after that, and $49 million in the last year of his deal, is that when it comes down to it, is that Vooch and Lonzo Ball's contracts are just easier to move at around $20 million. Zach LaVine's is almost double that, right? And so this is not the first time that we've heard that Lonzo and Nikola Vucevic could be moved more likely than Zach LaVine. And here's what I'll say on that. And I know this is not going to be a popular opinion because of how much the Zach LaVine trade talk has dominated the Chicago Bulls land for so long. But I'm going to say this, is that if you can absolutely, keep your top 10 pick and keep Zach LaVine, that gives you a couple of things, right? A, that gives you flexibility because I've said it before. If the best player on the board when the Bulls draft is a guard, I do think that the Bulls do that, right? Now, I think they go best player available, Asa Newell, VJ Edgecombe, these could be guys there. Kaman Malowik, these are guys that could be there, right, for the Chicago Bulls. But if you do that, you can still move Zach LaVine later. As the years come off his contract and also the trade kicker becomes less, you have the opportunity to still move Zach LaVine if that's what they want to do. And if they sit in a place where it's more of a luxury to move Zach LaVine than a need, then, of course, you can sit back and wait, right? But for my Bulls fans that also don't want to see this team be bad for years to come, if you move Lonzo and Vooch, let's just say that they do. I know that there are a lot of Bulls fans, contingent Bulls fans that want to see Lonzo Ball stay here as well. If you keep those guys, right? If you keep Zach LaVine and move those other guys, and you add a top 10 pick in this draft to this team, you still have Coby, you still have Ayo, you still have Zach LaVine at that point, you still got Modest Vucevic, you still got Jalen Smith, you still got Josh Giddey, you still got Dalen and Julian. You add a top 10 pick in that. And if it is a center, Kamal Malowik, or if it is a forward like an Asa Newell, you can plug them into what you're doing here. Then the Bulls could be right back competing for a playing spot, but they're doing it with a much younger core and developing pieces that have not even nearly scratched the surface of their talent. Or, like I said, you can end up trading Zach LaVine at the trade deadline next year as well, and then top 8 protected to the Spurs. If the Bulls are bad, right? So it's a lot of different avenues that the Bulls can go. I get it. I know everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people are focused on the pick this year. I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong for how you're viewing it. I'm just saying that there are multiple avenues to get there. And it's up to the Chicago Bulls to pick that. But, with Mark Stein pointing out that teams are really watching and waiting, and that shouldn't be too much of a surprise, right? When you have Vooch playing at a near all-star level, when you have LaVine playing at a near all-star level, when you have Lonzo, regardless of what Lonzo's injuries thinks, he's playing damn well as well. There are going to be teams that are like, hey, I hope they're willing to move off of these guys for little to nothing. And that's just the nature of the NBA. Every team is waiting for it. Hell, teams are doing it right now with Jimmy Butler, right? Playing hardball with the Miami Heat. By the way, go to NBA Central. If you're listening or watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, got a general NBA show, NBA Central. Go and look at that. But nonetheless, so you have to maneuver those things. And so that's one thing that I don't necessarily trust the front office to do. They've been behind on every evaluation they've ever done. And so we'll see what the Bulls can get out of it, if anything, and we'll watch and monitor it. But overall, I'll say this, right? I'm just going to leave this here, and we're going to move on here eventually, is that whatever the Bulls do, right? We heard the 35-game evaluation. The trade deadline is a little under a month away. Whatever happens next for the Chicago Bulls, they better, if they're going to make moves, be smart moves. Now, they're still going to probably not get the deal that a lot of Bulls fans are hoping. They've been seeing some crazy Bulls trades, but when you pair in the fact that, like, Golden State Warriors, and Mark Stein points this out in this article as well, that they're zeroing in on Nikola Vucevic, and that they are turned into a talking point to a legitimate landing spot for Vooch. I tell you what, if that starts happening when it comes down to it, and as you get closer to the trade deadline, these other teams become more and more focused on improving and adding these players, maybe the Bulls can actually be in a position where they can hold the power. Let's hope so. But you guys can let me know how you feel down below. With that said, last topic for today, the Bulls do have a game against the San Antonio Spurs. Wemby is coming in town, and, listen, Wemby is always a special player to watch. I think that when you see somebody who, I firmly believe that Wemby's going to be one of those players that lives up to every bit of the hype, and so I'm just excited to see Wemby. Don't forget, when we played the Spurs last year, Vooch actually gave Wemby some work. Right now, Wemby's, of course, grown. He's added some weight. He's done some things like that, but, this Spurs matchup is going to be really fun. And then you also have the implications, of course, of the draft pick as well, which people are looking at. But I think when you look at this game, keep in mind, Torrey Craig, Ayo Dosunmu have already been ruled out for this game, so they're not going to play. I was coming close to that 10-day evaluation, and I wonder what's going on with Ayo, where he is in that evaluation, the fact that it really doesn't seem like he's near coming back yet. And Torrey Craig, he got his own issues going on. He got caught in DMs, cheating on Meg Thee Stallion, so I'm sure he's using his time off to kind of save whatever he got going on, but nonetheless, freaky frog. Torrey Craig is a freaky frog. But listen, the Bulls coming into this game, it much stays the same for the Chicago Bulls, right? How much intensity are you willing to give on the defensive side of the ball? How well are your shots falling? How well are you executing on offense, right? Do we continue to see this Coby White come out the slump and this balance between him and Josh Giddey, like I talked about in the first segment? Do we continue to see that come along for this team? Those are all things to watch in this game, but I think overall it comes down to execution. So much of the Chicago Bulls comes down to execution. How you execute, right? It really is a determining factor in confidence. We have so many confidence players on this team that when their confidence is shaken, we start seeing the confidence of the team as a whole shake. And when that foundation starts shaking a little bit, it's not usually a good night for the Chicago Bulls. So we're definitely watching for that. But, how well we guard tonight is a big thing, because in our games that we've won against teams better than us, and make no mistake about it, even though the Spurs, sit where they sit, where they still are a better team than us right now. You gotta lock in, right? And you got to be able to have that defensive mindset where you got to at least make enough stops. The offense is great, right? Well, except in the half court, which is growing, and that's something that also grows with Coby White driving. Not to get to you to drill home on that point, but you got to get those things. You got to make it out, right? And so you got to come in here. You got to show some intensity. You got to show some pride. You're still on your home court tonight, right? And you got to take care of that business. And this was a team that really did show some edge on Derrick Rose night. And I hope that maybe, and it's always hopeful as a fan. It's a fan mindset thing for me, is that you find a way to kind of unlock that once you do it, right? And you realize, hey, listen, let's just go out there and have that edge, right? And that may be something that's difficult to tap into every single game. That is why having skill and well coaching is all important. But I hope that the Bulls do tap into that. Give the home crowd another show. But let me know your guys' thoughts on everything down below on all the topics today. What are some of the players that you want to see have a much better, second half of the season, even though we're a little ahead of that, and continue to grow? What do you think about teams monitoring the Chicago Bulls and waiting for the Bulls to basically slip up? And then lastly, what are your expectations for tonight's game against the Spurs? Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.